Hello and welcome to Today in History, December 14th. On this day in history, George Washington died. George Washington was the American Revolutionary leader and the first President of the United States, and he died at his Mount Vernon estate. He was 67 years old. Washington was born in 1732 to a farm family in Westmoreland County, Virginia. His first direct military experience came as a lieutenant colonel in the Virginia Colonial Militia. He led a small expedition against the French in the Ohio River Valley on behalf of the governor of Virginia. 2 years later, Washington took command of the defenses of the Western Virginia frontier during the French and Indian War. After the war's fighting moved elsewhere, he resigned from his military post and returned to a planter's life and took a seat in Virginia's House of Burgesses. During the next 2 decades, Washington openly opposed the escalating British taxation and repression of American colonies. In 1774, he represented Virginia at the Continental Congress. After the American Revolution erupted in 1775, Washington was nominated to be commander-in-chief of the newly established Continental Army. Some of the Continental Congress opposed this appointment, thinking other candidates were better equipped for the post, but he was ultimately chosen because, as a Virginian, his leadership helped bind the southern colonies more closely. With his inexperienced and poorly equipped army of civilian soldiers, Washington led an effective war of harassment against the British forces, while encouraging the intervention of the French into the conflict on behalf of the colonists. On October 19, 1781, with the surrender of British General Cornwallis's British Army at Yorktown, Virginia, Washington had defeated one of the most powerful nations on earth. After the war, the victorious general retired to his estate in Mount Vernon. But in 1787, he heeded his nation's call and returned to politics to preside over the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The drafters created the office of president with him in mind, and in February of 1789, Washington was unanimously elected the first president of the United States. As president, Washington sought to unite the nation and protect the interests of the new republic at home and abroad. His presidency he said, "I walk in an untrodden ground. There is scarcely any part of my conduct which may not hereinafter be drawn in precedent." End quote. He successfully implemented executive authority and made very good use of brilliant politicians such as Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson in his cabinet. In 1792, he was unanimously re-elected, but 4 years later he refused a third term. In 1797, he finally began a long-awaited retirement at his estate in Virginia, and he died 2 years later. His friend Henry Lee provided a famous eulogy for the father of the United States. Quote, "First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen." Some interesting facts about Washington are that he owned 30 hunting dogs. In his lifetime, he conducted over 200 land surveys. He crossed the Delaware in 1776 and endured Valley Forge winter in 1777, and died at his beloved Mount Vernon of a throat ailment. A quote that is often remembered from Washington was, "Observe good faith and justice towards all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with all." And that was the father of our country, who died on this date in history. I'm Michael Powell. Thank you for watching. Be sure and come back tomorrow and see what happened on that day in history. Till then, let's see what's coming up next.